Pivot open mic. Yeah, this is great. Thanks for coming. I'm going to do a few minutes of business, and then we're just going to start with the evening proper. First of all, what is Pivot? A couple of years ago, some people here in town affiliated with GU and other places said that we needed a storytelling event, a nonfiction storytelling event. So we needed to come up with a name, and the name came from every interesting story seems to have that moment where it turns. There's that pivotal moment where it changes. And so we decided to stick with Pivot, and we didn't know what the heck we were doing. And 2 years later, we've had some pretty good events. So and it's continuing here. So thanks for coming. What does the night look like? We're going to do 4 stories. We'll pull names out of a hat. Well, not a hat. It's actually a picture. We'll pull 4 stories out of it. We'll put them up here, and then we'll call them up, and then we'll take a little break so everybody can go to the bathroom and grab a drink, and then we'll do 4 more. And the idea is it's going to be 5 minutes, and I will keep a timer. It's not super strict. It's not like we turn off your microphone at 5 minutes, but you'll hear the timer, and that means that except for Daniel, because I know Daniel's going to go long. And then that's just kind of you know where the 5 minutes is, and if you still have a minute or so to finish your story, go ahead and do it. That's fine. But also, unlike what I have here, the idea of all Pivot events is this is your story. You know it. You don't really need the notes, so the suggestion is that you're just going to come up here and tell us a story the way you would tell it to anybody else. And then the evening, the Bartlett has, through the years, donated the night and just said, yeah, come on in, and that's really cool. Because we're partnering with the Spokane County Library District, they paid for the event tonight, so let's give them a hand. Dana is back there. She coordinated it. Thank you, Dana. Karen, would you mind coming up here, and we can figure out who our storytellers are? This is my wife, Karen. Everybody welcome her, please. And then she's going to write these down. It's just kind of fun to have the names written down here, and we have an order. And then if you didn't look at this, I just asked people to write down a phrase or a sentence that is a teaser for their story. It's kind of fun, kind of like a title for their story. So the first storyteller is Colin, Colin. I heard Colin out there go, oh. It's called Party Gone Wrong, 17 years old. The thing that popped into my head, which would make no sense, is what could go wrong. But he already said party gone wrong, so we know something went wrong. Our next storyteller is Daniel Walters, and the title of the story is The Spin Cycle. The Spin Cycle. And our 4th storyteller for the evening will be Katie Burns, Byrnes, Katy. So many Y's. And see, this is a spoiler alert. Why did you shouldn't have told us this part. It says car accident, and then there's an arrow, and it says, I don't die. I mean, you kind of gave away the punchline. So let's begin. Our first storyteller is Colin. Let's welcome Colin.
All right. Hello. Oh. Yeah, let's see. It's been a while. I used to do open mic nights back in the day, but was never very good at them. Oh, sweet.
There we go. Now you can work the room.
All right. So I read online that this is a family-friendly event. So some of the nouns and adjectives have been changed. It was 2009, 2010. I was 17 years old, and my mom was out of the house one weekend. So, of course, like any 17-year-old, I gathered probably 5 of my friends. We purchased booze from an adult that I will not name tonight. and we started texting and telling everybody to show up to my house at 7 o'clock at night. So 7 p.m. rolls around, and we started drinking our soda, and we started smoking legally acquired products. And basically no one shows up. And so we're like, okay, it's 7, whatever. 8 o'clock rolls around, still no one, it's just us, but we're having a good time. Everything's going good. Then 9 o'clock shows up. And suddenly a couple cars pull into my cul-de-sac. And just to let you know, we had 2 dogs at the time, Bud and Betsy. And I love those dogs. Betsy is terrified of everybody, so I made sure to leave her in a room locked away. And Bud is this super friendly, super loving, big, like 90-pound Labrador, St. Bernard, Rhodesian Ridgeback mix. But just big dog. So friends come in, we're, yeah, all right, music's going, everything's bumping. 10 o'clock comes around, and there's even more people, maybe like 20. But we know everybody, and it's all good. Well, then a friend shows up and goes, hey, I love that neighborhood dog you got. And I'm like, what neighborhood dog? And he's like, it's like this big, brown, friendly dog. He's just running around greeting everybody. I'm like, oh, that's Bud. Oh, my God. So I go outside, Bud, and nothing. Oh, God, Bud. Like, my mom loves our dogs equally to me. So if I were to lose Bud because of a party, she would probably disown me. So I find Bud, and he's happy, and he's smelling stuff. And oh, come on, come back in. And he's finally hanging out with everybody, keeping chill. 10:30, 11 o'clock rolls around, and out of nowhere, there is just car after car and person after person. And suddenly my house is filled with these strangers that I don't know these people. And there's a 30-year-old man and his group of friends in my living room. And just the house is packed, and I am just freaking out. So I have a powwow where I find a friend and I find another friend and come here. We got to think of something right now to get everybody out of here. Cops are coming. My mom's coming back. Oh God, cops should be enough, right? So, oh my God, the cops are here. Oh my God. And people start freaking out and leaving. And to people who weren't scared, my mom's coming back. She's going to kick us all out. We got to go. And so I'm kicking all these people out. And then this guy with hair down to his legs, probably in his 20s, opens up the door with these 2 24 racks of soda. And he's like, who's ready to party? And I'm like, get the hell out of here. So everyone's cleared out. We're all settling down, just finally calming down. And I'm so happy I'm just a white teenager who is a man who just, a group of men kicking everybody out is way better than a group of women. And I was so happy. I was so privileged and lucky. And I finally realized that. And it's all good. And I turn on Civilization 5 on the TV in the living room. And we play that. And everyone's gone. And that's my little story. So, thank you.
All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you. It doesn't have to be family friendly. We can say right? I think we can. Let's not go overboard, but I think we're fine. All right, Daniel's getting nervous. Daniel's setting his phone. Everybody, let's welcome Daniel Walters.
The machinery lets go when we begin falling 120 feet. And normally, I would be terrified. Normally, on a ride like Panic Plunge, I would be experiencing the eponymous panic of said plunge. But right then, in that moment, I was stoic as a stone. I had less fear than a 90s t-shirt. Because an hour earlier, I'd been experiencing the kind of drop, the kind of terrifying plunge that makes 120 feet look like stepping off the curb. You were driving north on interstate, on US 95, from Coeur d'Alene to Silverwood, and I was summoning up the courage to ask the second most terrifying question I'd ever asked in my life. I was sitting right next to a green-eyed Montana woman who I'd kissed the month before, who I had a crush on for 4 years, and I asked her, do you think we could we, I don't know, do you want to be my girlfriend? And normally when you ask a question like that, you want to hear back yes, or possibly yes, 1,000 times yes, but instead I hear silence. And the silence goes on for a long time like it was a sitcom cliffhanger, and I'm waiting for her to go back from the commercial break. And my mind begins to panic, and my heart begins to plunge, and at the very last moment where it looks like I'm going to hit the pavement and everything's going to be over, she says yes. And so when I get off the panic plunge, I'm still giddy and cocky, and she asks, what's next? And so I point my finger to the west like Babe Ruth calling the shot, and I say, the skydiver. What you should know about the skydiver is one thing. One thing, it doesn't exist anymore at Silverwood, possibly because the guilt became too much for the people that own it, even for a soulless corporation. Other thing is it's like a Ferris wheel, but with a twist. You go inside and they lock you inside a cage, and they hand you a steering wheel. And the steering wheel, as the ride goes around, the steering wheel controls the motion of the car, of the actual individual car. And the goal is to keep it as steady as possible. Like you're an airline pilot flying through turbulence without ruining a delicate souffle. But my new girlfriend, she didn't understand that. She was from Montana, where the men ride wild stallions and the women tame mechanical bulls and the congressmen sucker punch reporters. And so she gets this wild gleam in her eye, and she turns the wheel radically to the left, and I begin spinning, I begin tumbling, and the wheels of time begin turning, and all of a sudden I'm 11 years old again. And my dad and I have gone to Silverwood for one of those father-son bonding trips, and we've gone to see the magician, and we've gone on Thunder Canyon, and there's one ride in particular that I'm excited to show him. It's called Roundup. It's one of those gravitron rides. It spins you around and around and around. The G-forces push you back against it. And my dad's a science teacher. He's the kind of guy that can't decide whether his favorite force is centrifugal force or centripetal force, because there's a difference, son. His favorite movie is Apollo 13. So we get on the ride, and I'm looking over expecting him to be belting out the Bill Nye the Science Guy theme song, to be letting the G-forces wash over him. But instead, I see his face begin to turn paler and paler, a little like Bill Paxton when we get sick in Apollo 13. And so we get off the ride, and my dad is nauseous. And so the whole rest of almost the whole rest of the trip, he's sick, but he can't throw up. And so I'm standing next to the bathroom. The only thing I know how to do as a fledgling writer to help him out is I start yelling synonyms for vomit. But even that doesn't work. And so eventually, though, he just recovers naturally. And he asks me, we can have one more ride, so what's next? And I point to the west, and I say, skydiver. And he says, no, son, that's a bad idea, because my stomach can't take it. And suddenly, I'm back in the ride, listening to the words of my father echoing in my head, and knowing while I have my mother's eyes, I have my father's stomach. And the ride is beginning to move in every single direction at once simultaneously. And there's a clunk, and it begins to become unstuck in time. And suddenly I'm experiencing every single vomitous moment in my life simultaneously. I'm 9 years old, and we're on the winding Oregon Highway, and I see Cheeto dust on my sister's fingers, and the sight disgusts me so much that I hurl on the side of Interstate 84. I'm 15, and it's right before the Lincoln-Douglas debate semifinals, and I'm having a passionate argument, pouring out my most persuasive ideas directly into the garbage can of the Central Valley High School cafeteria. I'm 17 years old, and the moments before the starter pistol fires at the cross-country race, I'm fertilizing the lawn of Finch Arboretum with a carbo-loaded spaghetti puree I'm 23, and I'm so morally conflicted by the possibility of kissing a woman who currently has a boyfriend that I channel that angst into an impromptu prop-up modern art installation on the streets of Portland. Jackson Pollock, deconstructed and liquefied. I'm 25, and I'm in the bathroom of the IMD Performing Arts Center during the intermission of the hit Broadway musical Wicked, and I'm looking deep into the contents of my stomach begin defying gravity because I'm so excited and nervous and terrified to be sitting next to the same green-eyed Montana woman that I'm trapped in a spinning cage with right now. And the wheel in the sky keeps on turning. And that's when I realized that this isn't some carnival ride. This is a damn salad shaker. And if I don't stop this container from tumbling, pretty soon every inch of us is going to be absolutely covered head to toe in Thousand Island dressing. And I knew the one hope I have for avoiding that fate is to convince her to stop spinning the wheel, but I can't open my mouth. For the same reason that the little Dutch boy couldn't take his finger out of the hole in the dike. If I opened my mouth, I was going to flood all of Holland. And so instead, I look at her with my eyes and I desperately plead, please, mercy. And I don't know if it was the fact that we were boyfriend and girlfriend now, and so we had this telepathic connection, or if it was the fact that she noticed that my face was getting wider and wider like Bill Paxton's from Apollo 13. But she gets it. And suddenly she turns from the wild-eyed Montana woman into Sully Solenberger. And she guides the plane down, kissing lightly the surface of the Hudson River. And the legends still say that not a single souffle was lost that day. And then she asks me, and I'm sick, but I recover, and she takes care of me like I took care of my dad 15 years earlier. And then she asks me, what's next? And I say the roller coaster, but which I mean aftershock, but which I also mean the next 2 years of ups and downs and hairpin turns and confusing as hell corkscrews until we're on the road again. And this time we're driving south from Kalispell to Missoula, and I'm summoning up the courage to ask the first most terrifying question I've ever asked in my life. And I ask her, where's this relationship going? And there's silence. And it keeps, and again, there's silence. And again, my mind begins to panic, and again, my heart begins to plunge. But this time, she doesn't catch it. She says, I don't love you. I've never loved you. And I look at her with my eyes, and I'm pleading with her for mercy. But this time, she keeps spinning the wheel. And she tells me that when she wakes up, she's not excited to see me. When I'm gone, she doesn't miss me. That she's been trapped with me for 2 years, going around and around the same ride, and she's sick of it. It's only when the ride is over that it finally happens. I'm 27, and I'm staring deep into the Charybdis of my now ex-girlfriend's toilet. And the toilet is staring back into me. And I knew I'd given everything I had, almost everything I had into that relationship. But in that moment, I finally gave the last 2.5 quarts. And I clicked the plunger. I watched the relationship begin to drain down to the toilet. And I left, and I saw her waving goodbye on the balcony. And the first thing I did as I pulled out and drove back to Spokane, as I pulled out my phone, and I called the one person who would understand my nausea, the one person who'd always been there from the Cheeto dust and the cross-country race and the flus and the fevers with the pink throw-up bucket and the mop and the sawdust to clean up the chunks and hold me and quote me synonyms and nurse me back to health. Hey, what's up? Hey, Dad, I say. And then I spill my guts. Thank you.
Okay, and our last story before intermission, speaking of Lewis and Clark, this is the sister of one of my favorite students of all time. Please welcome Katie. Car accident, I don't die. Oh, there you are. Make sure this mic is good. Good with the mic? You gonna keep it in there?
I think I'll keep it in. Okay. Yes, I have two sisters that graduated from LC. I, unfortunately, had a private education. But my sisters know both of those guys. And my grandmother was the bra lady at the Bon Marché my entire childhood. If your mother or grandmother ever bought a bra in Spokane, she bought it from my grandma. Her name was Mimi. We called her Mimi. It was Doris Elliott. So, oh, there's my voice. I'm going to take it out. All right, so my name is Katie Burns, and I am a lifelong resident of Spokane, born and raised, proud. But I did grow up 10 miles south of town on the northern edge of the Palouse. From kindergarten to just after I started my 10th grade year, after football season had wrapped up, because I was a football cheerleader, which is different than a basketball cheerleader. We wear less makeup, and we can brave the cold. My parents transferred me from this rural farming community school up to a private Christian school on the north side. Maybe we were not wealthy by any means. My mother just, for some reason, felt she had a moral obligation to do this crazy thing in the middle of my high school career. So, living that far south and having to go that far north for school, it stood to reason that my parents would provide me a car. So it was I want to say 1980 Subaru station wagon. And I was involved in sports. So it was summer. It was the summer between my junior and senior year. I was 17 years old. I was on my way to a summer league basketball game. My younger sister, Emily, was going to go with me that day. My parents weren't going because, truth be told, if they went to everything I did, they would never see my other siblings. So I'm getting ready. We're hurrying up. I'm probably running late. I'm pretty low maintenance. I didn't have a lot to do, but I went ahead and put my hair in pigtails. My hair was long then, and I wore it in braids. I also, incidentally, wore safety goggles when I played basketball. It was awesome. So I take off north on 195, and I am approaching what is now Yokes, which was the trading company which started out as Tidyman's, which back then was literally nothing. It was just empty, and I had driven by it a million times in my life. I must have been putzing around in a backpack or purse or something, and my basketball shoe fell below my legs. So I reached down to get it, and when I get up, the reflector is right in front of me. I had veered to the left. So naturally, being 17, I veered back to the right. And I could have swore there was a car in the lane right behind me, kind of in the blind spot. So in a split-second decision, I veered, or more, overcorrected, back to the left. And the nose of my car hit that dirt median and flipped me airborne, landed me on the top of my car, which then had so much momentum that it bounced back up on four wheels facing west in the southbound lane. Got it? Now, as I'm tumbling through the air, there are certain things in motion that I have no idea. One of them being, there were no cars in the immediate area, praise Jesus, but there were cars approaching. One of them was the Kittredge family. I had grown up with them. I went to school with their kids, and they saw the accident, knew it was me, and literally just drove past and went to tell my parents. This was before the years of cell phones, which will prove I wasn't texting and driving. So they take off, and they're on their way. As the dust, I guess, sort of settles, I had obviously been knocked out, and I wake up to the smell of that acrid, hot, burning oil, and there was dirt in my mouth, and like every other accident, I didn't know where my shoes were. And as I go to get out of the car, there's people right there. And the first voice I hear is somebody saying, "I'm an EMT. I was just driving by. Are you okay?" I didn't know if I was okay. So he pulls me out onto the side of the road, basically in the middle of the highway, and takes the car mat out and sits me down. And really the only thing that had happened is there was blood on my hand, and he put a butterfly bandage on my knuckle. And as he was wrapping up with that, I hear my name. And and when you're in a situation where it's, even though I'm in a familiar place, I'd driven by that place hundreds of times, everything felt unfamiliar and chaotic. And to hear your name and hear something familiar was comforting. And I look up, and it's my Uncle Tommy. He's 6'4", big guy. And he kind of, and you know how when you're thinking of some things and you remember them as though you're looking down from above? And so the memory of him holding on to me in the middle of that highway is very clear. And I remember, but I can see it happening. I don't feel it happening. And he says, Katie, I never take this way home, but I just felt like I wanted to take a different way today. So as this is happening, my dad is coming down Hatch Hill, and he sees the sirens and hears the sirens, and he watches the emergency crews go by. The Kittredges had got to my parents' house and told my mom, but there was no cell phones, although my dad may have had a brick back in those days, now that I think about it. As he pulls into the driveway, they jump in the car and they head back towards me. They're behind the paramedics about 5 minutes, and at this point it's determined that while I'm shaken up and a little bit bloody, the car is totaled, I'm okay. So now we have to decide, am I going in the ambulance, or are they just taking me to the hospital on their own? Well, at this point, I don't know, but I found out my parents didn't have medical insurance at the time. My dad owned his own company my whole life, and so insurance kind of came and went. So I can imagine my parents' stress as they're sitting there, their daughter, who seems to be okay, her car totaled, and has to go off to the emergency room. So we're standing there, me, my mom, my dad, ENT, EMT, EMT. It's all very serious. Asking me questions like, what's the date? Do you know who the president is? They wrap that up, and I stop, and I get very serious, and I look at them, and I say, I have a question for you. And their facial expressions change, like something earth-shattering is about to happen. And I say, does my hair still look good?
Okay, so we're going to do 4 more, and then we'll send you on your merry way. The first story in the second half is Christian Mckinney, Mckinney, and the teaser is what you don't expect to find on a mountain. I can think of a lot of things. Our next storyteller is Rick. And the tagline is, my pet peeve about food. You only have one? I have at least a dozen. I'm trying to read that first name. Smith. Is that Mary? Okay, like Merry Christmas. Yes. Okay, Merry. Okay. I couldn't tell if it was Mary or Mercy. Mercy. May I call you Mercy? Yes. Okay, thank you. I think this was a viral video back in the day. 6 guys, 3 toilets. All right, Daniel, which hand?
Oh, definitely the good one.
I don't have a good one. Okay. So our final story, it's kind of nice because Dana is really one of the main reasons tonight happened. So it's Dana telling our last story. And the title is The Politics of Being a Perfect Granddaughter. That is a good title. The Politics of Being a Perfect Granddaughter. Let's give Karen a hand. Yeah. At the end of the show, we'll be auctioning off this piece of paper, so. All right, so our first storyteller, please welcome to the stage, Christian.
Hello. Hi, thank you. I hold it or?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, do it.
Hello, everybody. Oh, it's hard to see you guys. I believe you're all there. My name is Christian. I am going to wear my backpack for this because it's about adventure, and you need to wear a backpack on adventures. Also, the straps make me feel comfortable and safe. I'm happy right now. So, let me tell you about what you do not expect to find on a mountain. The story begins with me and my 3 housemates who lived together for 2 years here in Spokane, became a band of brothers, if you can think of it that way. But don't think that means we're awesome, because like we still didn't do our dishes and got at each other. That's just normal. So we decide, after parting ways over the summer, one of our number, his name is Joel, he was a pastor of sorts in a small town called Jordan, Montana. Anybody know Jordan? That's what I would expect. So to tell you something about Jordan, the population or the membership of his church was larger than the membership of the town, the people who lived there. So you know they're coming from all around. Somehow, though, there were 4 churches in this town, and it had like 200 people. How's that even possible? At any rate, Joel is there, and he decides he wants to stay a little longer than just the summer. So he stays a few extra months, but we have not seen him in forever, and we want to go backpacking because that's what men do when we want to feel cooler than we are and like we can handle stuff. So we're going to meet up with Joel, but the problem is Jordan is in the northeast corner of Montana, super far away. So we decide we'll meet in Montana for this. And because we're lazy and we don't text each other very often, we don't get around planning this till September, and we don't plan it till the end of October. And if you're familiar with Montana at the end of October, you know where this is going. So we decide we'll meet up anyway. And to top it off, we decide we'll do a hike called Refrigerator Canyon. So we're going to meet up there. We decide this is great. So we leave early in the morning. Joel leaves early in the morning. We're journeying to meet at this point. I did not know how big Montana is. So it took us the same time to get there that it took Joel. It took both of us 8 hours. We were going from Spokane there. He was coming from eastern Montana. He traveled 8 hours without even getting halfway across Montana. That's insane. So we're wondering where we should meet up when we get into this town, because we've never been there before, and who knows if it's even on a map. I don't even remember the name of the town. It was like Sloan or something like that. So I text Joel, and he says, well, let's just meet at the bar. I assume he knows what the bar is. And I say, which bar? How do I know? And he says, you'll probably know. So we drive into this town. There are 2 roads in the town. They intersect, and at the intersection is a bar. In fact, it's the only thing at that intersection. In fact, it's the only thing in the town. The town is basically a bar. So we get there, amazingly, within a minute of when Joel gets there, after this 8-hour drive. And then Joel confesses he actually didn't know that there was a bar in this town. He just knows Montana. Which was amazing. So we go inside. There's only one guy working there. He says, oh, hey, guys, I've had about 4 drinks already today. I'm so glad you're here. We have a great time getting to know this man. He offers to smoke weed with us at least 7 times. We decline respectfully, and we get up on our way. The hike starts like less than a mile away. So turns out Refrigerator Canyon is named after this rock feature that fills with these icy winds. It's kind of this channel through the rock. And it makes you feel cold, apparently. Also, apparently, out of the 12 miles of this hike, this canyon is approximately the first 200 feet. So you know all those movies out there that are named after what happens in the first 30 seconds? Yeah, that's not cool. That's not what people do. But that's what this hike was. So the rest of it was just trees, uphill, uphill. We had a good time, but it wasn't as exciting as we were expecting. Hiking up and up and up, we know we just got to get to the top. There's a prairie there. We can camp there. So we get to this prairie, and it's really late at night. It's pretty much dark already, but we got to get some water because we didn't bring enough water. So there's a kind of a copse of trees in this prairie, and we figure there's going to be water somewhere in that area. It's kind of a low dip. There's lots of foliage. So Joel and I, we set off. We only bring one flashlight because we're geniuses. We're kind of going around the trees, don't see any water, finally see some, but it's like sludgy water, you know? It's like where animals muck around in. We get all the way around. We've probably walked like a quarter mile, still nothing. And Joel says, I think we should go a little farther. So we walk a few steps farther and hear the gurgle of water, and it was a glorious sound. So we excitedly come through the forest. We're kind of getting into the dark group of trees, and as we're finally scooping up our water, we hear a noise that sounds kind of like this. And we think some words that I'm not going to say out loud right now, and immediately start booking it out of there. And well, by booking it, I mean kind of walking cautiously, looking over our shoulders. And then we see 2 points of light moving like this. And those points of light aren't a few inches apart. They're probably like 9 inches apart. So we think, oh, and we start booking it at that point. We are running back to camp, just hauling. We get back there. We literally drag these fallen trees around our campsite as like barricades, as if that's somehow going to save us from the cougar impending death. And we barely fall asleep. And the next morning, we see paw prints all around those trees, and paw prints following the path that we took from the woods. We're glad we were only staying up there one night. So let me get along to what you don't expect to find. So we go back down to our water hole with all of us, and we're filling up our bottles and just happy to be alive, you know? And one of my friends, Brandon, as we're in this creek, he's always kind of curious, so thank you. He's moving rocks, and he shifts this rock and sees something blue, and he says, what? Hey, guys, look at this. He shifts another rock. It's a can of Bud Light. Moves the rock completely, 4 cans of Bud Light, just chilling in this creek. And we're like, okay. But they're really dirty. They're about a year expired. You guys know that doesn't make a difference, right? So we decide we'll take one of these back and we'll open it, see how it is. So we do and have it with dinner. It's amazing. Bud Light has never been so fresh. It was delicious, refreshing. So Joel and I decide that evening we'll go back and get the rest of the cans. So we do, we're making our hike. We get there, lift up this rock, packing in our Bud Light. And then Joel moves another rock and sees more blue. Finds a few more cans of Bud Light. We're like, what? He moves another rock, more blue. I remember this moment as we're both standing looking at the river, and our heads slowly turn in unison, and down the creek bed, blue, blue, blue. So we go on this manic 10-minute scavenger hunt and find no less than 22 cans of Bud Light pre-chilled in this Alpen river. Our only conclusion is that somebody brought a 24-pack, drank 2, and I guess died. Because why else? So we're filling our pockets. We don't have bags or anything with us. We're just getting water. Stuffing our pockets and our pants with this. Get back to the campsite. We have so much of it that not only do we drink it, we use it to cook with. We use it to make our soup. Because we don't have fresh water, and this is already, it's sanitary. So just have a jolly time up on the mountain. And, our best conclusion was that, Jesus turned water into wine for a wedding. But on the mountain, he turned water into Bud Light. And that is what you don't expect to find on a mountain. Thank you.
So when he started that story, it made me think of, did you hear about that guy in Colorado who killed the cougar with his bare hands? Did you hear that story? If you haven't heard that story, the guy's running on a trail in Colorado, and he hears footsteps behind him, and he turns around. There's an 80-pound cougar chasing him. The cougar attacks him, and the guy killed the cougar with his bare hands. I thought that was what that story was going to be. Let's welcome Rick, his pet peeve about food.
Well, you're right. We haven't hit on my pet peeve, and so now I feel like a real freak about this. But my pet peeve is that I hate it. I hate it when somebody takes somebody else's food without asking permission first. Like when you're at a restaurant and there's somebody there, and it's with where you're with like family or coworkers or friends, and somebody just all of a sudden goes over to the next plate and takes a sample of it. Like, oh, meatloaf, and eats it. I hate that. I hate it. It's rude. It's presumptuous to think that this whole world is an open buffet for you to have, where you can just eat whatever you want to without asking. But the main reason why I hate it, the main reason why it's a pet peeve, is that every time I've tried something like that, it's backfired on me. So for example, when I was 15 years old, I was at a scout meeting out in a church in the Spokane Valley. And I was in a room where they usually had arts and crafts. And I'm sitting there and I look over in the corner and there's a stack of boxes like what they usually put sheet cakes in. And this is a stack like a giant Jenga sculpture. I think, why is there so much cake here? So I go over to the corner, I look around to make sure no one's watching. I open up the top box and I don't see any cake, but there's these little white pieces of chunks throughout the box, like cake frosting. And I think, why is there no cake? Why is it just frosting when frosting is the best part of a cake? So I look around again, no one's watching. I slip my hand in, I pop a couple nuggets in my mouth, and it wasn't frosting, it was soap shavings. Like maybe it was some type of a soap sculpture class or something like that. And in the history of washing your mouth out with soap, young man, this was probably the first time the soap went into the mouth before the bad language came out. When I was 16 years old, my family had a large group of relatives come over for Thanksgiving. And a large mass of them, just this genetic mob, were all crammed into the kitchen to fix the Thanksgiving dinner. And I was sitting off to the side watching the melee going on. And as I'm sitting there, I'm next to a counter and there was a cup there filled with brown liquid. And I thought, this must be someone's Coke. Or maybe it's this rum and Coke I keep hearing so much about. I'll have to sample this. So I take the cup and I took a big sip, and it wasn't Coke. It was the brine from a can of olives. My mom had drained the can into this cup to save it for later, as if there was leftover olives afterwards, she'd have it to put, something to put back in, the olives back in. When I'm expecting this cool, carbonated, sweet drink and getting this flat, salty brine liquid, my mouth actually sucked into the back of my head to where I could kiss my tonsils. And I needed a plunger to get my face back out the way that it was. When I was 17, it was summer, Saturday afternoon, and I had been off doing some things with some friends, and I came home and the house was empty. My parents were out doing something, my 4 siblings were out doing their own thing. There was one other family member home, and it was our dog, Susie. Susie had been a member of our family for many years. So I played with Susie for a while, and I walked into the kitchen, and there was a plate on the counter that had a piece of bread cut into 16 perfect squares with peanut butter spread just straight across, flat, smooth across the bread. I thought, oh, somebody must have made a snack for themselves and didn't get a chance to eat it. Well, finders, keepers. And I ate about half the slice of bread, and then I went downstairs to the family room to watch TV. About an hour later, I heard footsteps upstairs, so I went up there, and it was my mom. So we talked a little bit about our day, and then my mom glanced over and saw the plate that was sitting there with the half-eaten bread, and she said, oh, Susie finally got to eat her snack, huh? And I looked down at our feet with Susie laying there doing what dogs usually do, licking herself. And I said, Susie, what do you mean, Susie? My mom said, well, I made this snack for Susie before I left. I put it down on the floor for her, and all she did was licked most of the peanut butter off the top of the bread. So that nice sheen that I saw on top of the bread as I was eating it wasn't the oil from peanuts. It was the spit from Susie. My mom could tell from the nauseated, disgusted look on my face that Susie was not the one who had eaten her snack. So yes, we all have these pet peeves, but it's because of these three things that my pet peeve is about food, about people who eat things without asking, because I never get away with it. And so because of that, I never eat food without asking first, except if it's French fries, because I still just cannot resist stolen French fries. Thank you very much.
I didn't see that one coming. I was trying to imagine, I thought maybe the reveal of that story would be that somebody in his family was doing that to him on purpose. I thought that would have been funny, his mom running around going, watch what Rick's going to eat. He didn't learn the first 2 times. Watch Rick. Watch him. He's going to do it. Yeah, he did it. Woo, we got him. Okay, I'm a little nervous about this next story. Mary said she's a little nervous too. So we'll be nervous together. Let's welcome Mary to the stage.
Are you going to pull the mic out?
Yeah, I'm going to probably have to do that. Hi. Good job to the people who practiced and had something before they came. So 6 guys. I have 4 children, 4 boys. I have a husband and my younger brother that I live with. That is a lot of wieners. And there are 3 toilets in my house. There is 4 bedrooms, 3 toilets, 6 guys, myself. And I basically don't have anywhere to use the lavatory. No toilet is decent. There's a toilet next to my kitchen, which I call the pooper, because it is the one that has the most new plumbing. It was put in, I think, probably in the 80s or something. The other 2 toilets are very small, like the copper, tiny. And so the last time that my mom came to visit, she clogged the toilet, and it cost me $300. So we have designated this toilet next to the kitchen. It's inconvenient that it's next to the kitchen, but that's the pooping toilet. And so when you come to my house, I'm like, listen, if you've got to poop, just go in that one, okay? But the hallway toilet is what most people want to use because it's like more communal and private, but it's got the small pipes, so don't poop in that one. But it is where my kids bathe, so I don't go near that thing because they also poop in the bath. Yeah. So they poop in the bathtub, they poop in the toilet. I don't go in there unless I absolutely have to. And then there's my toilet in my bathroom, in my room. And it's smaller, but I share it with a guy. Now I share it with 2 guys because my brother has also gotten smart to the fact that this is where my 4 boys bathe and poop all within like 2 feet of each other. And so now he uses the other toilet. So you see where my problem is here. I have nowhere to go. I have nowhere to put my things. All my makeup smeared on the walls. All like my toiletries, all my private women stuff, up noses. Just unwrapping them and just playing with them. They're expensive. I like the nice ones. So this morning I'm like, I've got to go, and it's 4:27 in the morning. Okay, no decent human being is up at this time, and I'm up with my 7-year-old, and I go and I take him out to the kitchen because that's what we do in the mornings, and I close my little pocket doors, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh God, I've gotta go. So I go over and I go into the pooper, and I gotta go to number 1, and which is, it's a fine place to go, and I sit down, and it's wet, and it's not for me. So I sit up and I like wipe my thighs, and I'm done with that. And then the day goes on, and it's maybe an hour later, and I've got 4 cups of coffee in me at this time, and I've got to go again, and so this time I run into the the hallway bathroom, and I run in there, and there's no toilet paper. Okay, so it's like, this is not good. This is 2 toilets now. So then I go into my bathroom, and I flip up the lid, and I look in there, and I'm just like, oh my God, what happened? And I'm sorry, but it's an explosion. And there is like an entire roll of toilet paper shoved inside the tiny hole, the tiny plumbing hole. And I'm not trying to start my Thursday by reaching in and excavating. It wouldn't be my first time, but I'm just saying I wasn't trying to do that today. So I think, you know what? I'm just going to hold the handle down and just jiggle it like super hard, and it'll like, I don't know, just break into little pieces and then, go down and up. I don't know where this stuff goes. So I hold down the handle, and it starts rising. It starts rising to the top, and I'm thinking, oh, and then magically it slowly goes back down, and I'm calling to my husband, Eric, get the plunger! And he runs in, and I'm like, oh, God, we're safe. He went back down. Okay, I'm going to go take the kids to school. I'll see you. I'll be back. I come back home, and Eric says, well, I'm going to head off to work, which means I'm going to take an hour in the bathroom by myself. Must be nice. And and then I'm going to go to work. Well, probably about 20 minutes later, I hear, Mary, get the plunger! And I'm like, did you seriously in that toilet after what happened this morning? Are you kidding me? Like, who does this? And as I'm saying this in a very much nicer way, I'm like, oh my God, poop water is flowing everywhere. And he's like, get a towel. And I'm like, oh my God, I just did laundry. No! And so I do. I run and get the towels, and I'm just throwing them in at him, and we don't. Where is our plunger? Did you borrow our plunger, Tara? Are you serious? That's all we could come up with. We don't know where our plunger is, so Eric has a toilet brush that's like this long, and he's just in there, and he's just getting it, and I'm throwing towels in at him, and his arm hair is just now, it's got like the little debris of poop on it. Oh my God. Ugh, my life with dudes. Figure it out, guys, and just keep the poop to the pooping toilet. You know what I'm saying? I'm done. I'm out of here. I'm going to Target. I'm going to my happy place where I buy the nicest, fanciest, most expensive plunger and a quart of Drano. And I don't know. I mean, I'm just saying I need my own toilet and maybe a urinal and 6 guys, 3 toilets. The math is a little off in my favor, but anyways, that's all I got. Thanks for letting me share.
I think there were 2 camps in this room during that story. There's the people without kids going, ew, why is she telling this story? And then there was the people with kids going, mm-hmm. Yep, been there. So, yeah, it's like, I mean, yeah, we've all had, if you have kids, and boys, it's even worse, right? So we have one more story coming up before we do, because I'm sure everybody's going to disperse afterwards. First of all, let's thank all the storytellers. They did a great job. Second, let's thank the Bartlett and Chris, our sound and light guy. So our last storyteller and the person responsible for the evening, I really didn't plan it this way. It couldn't have been any better. Let's welcome Dana.
Oh, it could have been better. is what happens when you have to throw an emergency story in just so that we have 4. Okay, here we go. This is a story about the politics of being a perfect granddaughter. So I need to tell you a little bit about my grandmother. My grandmother, as far as I can tell from the home movies, which are on those 16 millimeter film that goes from one reel to another, is that she was the kind of woman in the 60s who fed her 8 children, her husband, and her mother-in-law a multi-course meal every night with a dessert cooked from scratch that she had prepared wearing pearls and high heels. That was what I picked up when I was little watching the movies. What I picked up later from family stories was that she had a shot of Jack Daniels first. But there she was. She grew up on a farm. She, used to the hard work and the feeding the harvesters at harvest time. And then she met my grandfather in biology class when she went to college. This would have been late 30s, early 40s. And he was one of those first-generation Italian boys with the big rubbery ears and the chocolate brown eyes. So they got married. And then my aunt was born premature. But I don't blame her, because he had those chocolate brown eyes. So there he was. So they got married. He went into the Air Force and became an OB-GYN, and they went around to military bases delivering babies. And then they settled in San Diego, and there she was a doctor's wife. And we, after she died, we got to read through her journals, and she would talk about having her friends over for cocktails after dinner and listening to classical opera on her very, very expensive state-of-the-art 1960s sound system. So that was my mother, and that was the family that my dad grew up in San Diego. Meanwhile, in this strange place called Spokane, my mom was having another kind of childhood. Her mother kicked her dad out of the house when my mom was 5 because of his drinking problem. Never mind about her drinking problem, which she subsidized with Valium sometimes. So that was rough. And so while my dad was having these multi-course meals with the dessert from scratch, my mom was occasionally getting a frozen pizza to split between the family in front of the TV. With a different gentleman on the couch every 6 months or so. So it was rough. So these were the stories that I heard as a very, very little girl. I knew that my dad came from a place that was kind of regulated and not chaotic, and that my mom came from a place with a lot of pain. My mother, well, I guess we gotta go here real quick first. Sorry, guys. My dad moves up to Spokane to go to GU, and he gets a phone call from his dad the first summer that he's there that says, "How about you look at a piece of property for me? I'm thinking of buying an apple orchard." My poor college-age dad finds out that his family home is being uprooted. My grandfather has decided to sell his medical practice. This is in the 70s. There are a lot of malpractice suits going around, and I found out at his funeral that my grandfather felt that the trust between the patient and the doctor had been broken, and he no longer wanted to practice medicine. So he came to Spokane, and he came to Okanagan, and he bought an apple orchard, and my grandmother, with the pearls and the high heels and the Jack Daniels, became a farmer's wife again. And she took up quilting. And she had a beautiful pantry filled with jars that looked like they held jewels in them. They were peaches and pears and apples and cherries that she had canned. And it was a lovely place. So we would go to the sanctuary that was their home in the middle of the apple orchard. And they had built it on a hill, and she could see the Okanagan mountain range out her window and the beautiful flowers there. My dad brings my mom there while they are dating on my mom's birthday. And for the first time in her life, she has a birthday cake made from scratch by my grandmother. This is Spokane, so probably, 75% of you have a dead Catholic grandmother somewhere out there? Yes? Okay. So my grandmother's birthday cakes were like a sacrament. If you've got a dead Catholic grandmother, she would have told you a sacrament is when God's grace comes into something physical. So when you ate that, you were eating a piece of heaven. My mother brought a piece home to her older sister who said, "If this had been my birthday So whenever I went to visit my grandparents' house, believing that they represented order and everything good in life, I set a very strict of rules for myself. I tried to, as close as I could, to approximate a good little girl in a 1950s Sunday school book of some kind. So I followed rules I had made up for myself that I never did anywhere else. For example, I wore shoes in the house, and I washed my hands before meals. And I thought that in this way I could be the perfect granddaughter who fit into this perfect home with the perfect grandmother. When I was 5, my world was upended because a little sister was born. I had another little sister, but I didn't remember her being born. There wasn't a time when there wasn't one, and then there was. And this one was kind of wild and freestyling and crazy. So the first time she went to my grandparents' house, my dad got off at work on REI at like 9. We got in the car. We got there at like 11. My grandparents were in bed. My little 2-year-old sister proceeded to make a mess in the bathroom that would have put your boys to shame. And we have this picture of her covered in toothpaste and the paste that you make out of soggy toilet paper. And it's all over everything in my pristine grandmother's house. And I thought it's a good thing my mom is here and knows how to clean up this mess, because otherwise we would be disowned. So we get there, and we decide to celebrate Claire's birthday there. So that's my younger sister. Man, she just broke every rule I'd ever made there. It was crazy. She would open drawers just to find out what was in them. Who does that? And my sense of 8-year-old order was really thrown off. So we get to the kitchen table, and we eat our meal, and I eat even the parts that I wouldn't eat at home. And I try and chew with my mouth closed. And I drink water, which is healthy, and things like that. And I figure that I've done pretty good upholding the family honor at this point. And dessert comes out, and it is a beautiful Sacramento chocolate cake with pink stars all over it. And we enjoy the chocolate cake. And after we have finished the chocolate cake, my sister Clara looks up from her empty plate, and she looks at my grandmother, and she says, "Can I have seconds?" I thought, Grandma didn't see the bathroom, but this is much worse. And I wondered where the thunderbolt was going to come through the roof without ruining my grandmother's perfect vaulted ceilings. And I sat there in suspense, and a smile cracked across my grandmother's face. And she looked at Clara, and she took her knife, and with a chest that was swelling bigger every moment, she cut her a huge slice that 3-year-old was never going to finish. She already had one slice of cake in her. And she put it on that plate, and she set it in front of her, and she said, "In all my years of making meals for my family," her large family, her 8 children, her husband, and her mother-in-law, "no one has ever asked for seconds on one of my desserts." So at that point, I decided I needed to reevaluate some of my rules. It's all very well to try and be the perfect granddaughter by following the strict protocol you invented as a 5-year-old. But we needed to add a protocol in, and that protocol that I added was never let a social sensibility get in the way of gratitude or telling someone how much you love them. So, thank you.
One more successful pivot open mic night in the books. Again, let's thank all the storytellers. You should consider telling a story here one of these times. Please visit that table back there and make sure you're on the email list. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you.